There are occasions when we have a photograph that we would like to make look as though it was an old photograph, and in this tutorial I just want to share with you how to do that. Now this is the image that we're looking at. It's actually 720 pixels across by 1080 pixels high. It doesn't matter what the size is, but that is the size of this particular image. And the first thing that we need to do is to download a textured paper from the internet. Now all you need to do is go to your search engine, type in textured paper images, and it will bring up a whole host of textured paper images for you to look at. And this is one that I've selected. We're going to use it for this particular exercise. And as you can see, the size of that is obviously not 720 by 1080. So I've set up a crop tool that will allow me to crop to that size, the same size as my image, and I can reposition it within there by using the arrow keys. I'm just moving it a little bit to the right so that we don't have too much of this into the photograph, but you can see it's got the idea of watermarks, a photograph that's got damp, deterioration around some of the edges. And I'm going to press enter to crop that, and Control 0 will give us an idea of what the textured paper will look like. I'm going to copy that by Control A, which selects it all. We can see that by the marching ants, and Control C, and then back to our image and Control V, and we've placed it across the top of our image. I'm going to select it again, get rid of this by just simply selecting the rectangular marquee tool. Image, adjustments, desaturate. And the next thing that I'm going to do is to change the blending mode from normal to overlay. And you can see we're beginning to get something showing on our image. The next stage of this process is to apply a gradient map, and dependent on what version of Photoshop you're using will depend on how you access that. On mine here, it's from this palette, the layers palette, and select this icon here and gradient map. And again you can see that there is an effect on the image. I want to select into the black area here. We need this particular gradient to be from black to white, not black to transparent, but black to white, and then we can change the colours, which is what I'm about to do. If I select this area here and into colour, left clicking into colour, I'm going to use 311F00, and you can see that gives the idea, at least the start, of a sepia type image. I'm going to say OK. I have the opportunity to change the gradient colours from the brown at one end to any colour that I want at the other end, but for this exercise we need to leave that white, and so I'm going to say OK. We're starting to get the feel now of the image itself. What I want to do next, I shall just take that down, and again in the layers come to this section here and apply a photo filter. And there are various that we can use. I'm going to use to start with the warming filter, 85, and probably around about 45-47%. That looks okay at this stage. Drop that back down again, and again come and select another photo filter, which this time I'm going to use the deep yellow. And here we have deep yellow, perhaps about 30 on here, not too great. Just collapse that again, and you can see that our image is beginning to take some sort of shape. Because it's very light, I'm going to go back to the image itself now, select it, the layer, and in image adjustments I'm going to brightness and contrast. I'm going to take the brightness down significantly, and we begin to see some of these defects, as it were, in the image appearing. the watermarks, the stains, and I'm also going to take the contrast down, because if you've looked at any very old photographs, the contrast tends to be very, very low. They don't have the lenses, or they didn't have the lenses then that we have now. So probably around, let's just have a look, say 25, minus 25, somewhere around there. That should be okay. Let me type it in, minus 25. And I'm going to say OK. And I think we're getting very close to the point where we could say this actually does look like a very old image. But what I also want to do is to add some blur. Again, the quality of the images was not so brilliant in those days, so I'm going to my filter, blur, and to Gaussian blur. And that's set at about 0.5. Perhaps stand a wee bit more. Let's just have a look. 0.7, what's that like? I think that's probably about okay. And I'm going to accept that. And the other thing that I want to do is to add a little bit of noise. So again, filter, noise, add noise. Let's just drag that out of the way so we can see what it looks like. Well, it's at 1.6. If I take it down a touch, I don't think we see too much of the noise there. Take it just over 1, perhaps. Let's just type in 1.2, see what that looks like. Yes, I think that's quite acceptable. Again, with all of these things, this is your own personal choice, but that's where I'm going to leave this particular image. And we could at this point accept that, okay, but I just want to do a little bit of tweaking, just because I can show you how to do that, because each image varies and we need sometimes to vary not only the image itself but the overlay image, the textured paper overlay, and perhaps some of the color filter that we've introduced into there. So first of all, let's select the image with the overlay, and again, if I go to image, adjustments, brightness and contrast, I have the facility to affect the image by reducing the brightness on that. Affecting the contrast, because it is a gradient map, has little effect apart from brightening it. If I increase the contrast, we just seem to get a brighter image. If I reduce the contrast, we lose a little bit of effect of that textured paper. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I've just reduced the brightness a little bit, and I'm going to say OK. Color wise, well, let's just have a look. Let's select this first filter. That was our gradient tool here, and if we go to the opacity, we can see what effect that does by reducing the opacity there. And I think that is probably a bit too much. I tend to work around the 60 to 75% in reducing the opacity. Full opacity 100% is that. Take it down perhaps about 60% on this one. And if we have a look at the yellow one, that was this one here, again looking at changing the opacity, we can just bring that down a touch, and I think that's quite acceptable. There is one final thing that I'd like to do and show you that we can do this. Select the layer again for the image. We can adjust various areas using the tools over here, the dodge burn tool, and if we set the burn tool for highlights, I'm going to set the exposure around, let's say 25%. In fact, I'll type that in, 25%, and see what effect that has. With the burn tool, increase the size of the brush by making sure that the caps lock is off and using the square bracket keys, and we can just put a little bit of darkening into the sky here. Reduce the size. We can get a sort of a vignette effect, if you like, using this particular method. I'm Just take a little bit around there, not as much. Take it off the sides, but round the edges to just emphasize the subject matter in the middle of the image. It's possible to do it down below as well, but we actually need to change that to the midtones to affect that area there. And just do this sweeping round. It gives it that little bit of a vignette type look. I think I'm going to take down some more brightness in here because we've still got quite bright in the area. This is just me now tinkering with the image to suit my own preferences. So let's just see what happens if we take the brightness down a touch more. That's probably a wee bit better. But of course, it's all personal preference. I'm going to say OK at that. And that's how we make an old looking image. And of course that depends on the image itself, it depends on the texture paper that you use, but you get the idea of the process, that we don't just do 1, 2, 3, 4 and that's it. We do have the opportunity to adjust, well, not only the opacity, but we can adjust the fill as well on the filters. We can adjust the overlay of our textured paper, we can adjust the brightness and contrast of our image, we can add noise, we can add blur, and it all goes to making that image look as though it is quite a number of years old. I do hope you found that helpful.